to pursue their own goals, it's also fine. No, I don't think there's a need to have a family inside the business, unless the person is excellent.
This is one case in which history clearly won't be repeating itself. For Kok Wah, the family fortune was the one goal he aspired to. 3 decades ago, nothing would have stopped him from taking over from where his father would have left off.
When I was in the university, I had to stay on top of the factory because my brother got married and the room was given up, so I went there to stay. As a result, I learned to work and study at the same time. Wasn't much of a student, always liked to do business.
In 1970, Wee Kok Wah, then only 21 years old, graduated from the National University of Singapore with a degree in social sciences and economics. Initially, he thought of pursuing a career in banking, but soon he had set his heart on joining his father's business.
I had options to either work for my father or either go out and look for a job. Applied for a banking job, and after 3 interviews, I said it was stupid. I didn't want. So I decided I want to go and work for my father and went into the business.
The family business started out in the early 1940s as a small petrol company. Kok Wah's father, Wee Boon Kui, a fisherman from Riau, had decided to seek his fortune in Singapore. He arrived in Singapore in the early 1930s. From a humble background, Boon Kui and his wife started to venture into the tire rethreading industry during the British occupation. To show his father he could do the job, Kok Wah was prepared to work his way up through the ranks. Despite being a university graduate and having friends who were in well-paying jobs, the future millionaire was not deterred by any task he was set, no matter how menial.
When I joined formally in 1970, Jurong was just developing, getting in a faster pace, so we had to get tires for retreading, so I bought a second-hand truck. I remember it's about $500. And I drove to Jurong almost every day to collect tires for retreading. I met all the contractors and so forth, put service centers in Jurong, and ensure that the retread plant in Kallang was filled up. It was good, I was correct then, but it was hard work. You had to deal with people at the floor, you had to compete with other people for the work.
The small tire rethreading firm, which had begun by exclusively servicing the British Army, had grown considerably since it had been started by Kok Wah's father. Once the nation gained independence and as the Singapore economy developed, the government stepped in to help small businesses grow.
And basically because we gained independence, the PAP came in. We subscribed to the government programs for light industries. The EDB helped us. They gave you working capital loans, they give you factory loans, they give you equipment loan. In those days, it was fantastic.
Then, still a $50,000 a month business, Stamford Tires was to see new horizons open as the young graduate started to implement his own ideas. Ideas that were very different from his father's.
And the business continued to grow, especially when I had to diversify our position with the changing of the business customer base. With the British withdrawal, our army was relatively small, so it couldn't support the kind of volume we wanted. I began to diversify, went into Indonesia, went into Malaysia to look for work from the mining, construction, and forestry business.
Cashing in on the forestry business in Malaysia wasn't the only new direction Kok Wah propelled the company into. He began to seek opportunities to expand their distribution business overseas. As early as the 70s, Stanford Tires was already moving into regionalization, a business strategy that was ahead of its time.
And I knew that we had to go regional, we had to go to Indonesia, Malaysia to look for the big multinational because the company need cash flow to survive. When you get into distribution, a lot of financing is required. You have to extend the dealer's credit. And being a small company, you're short of working capital. Ideally, it should be cash, cash is king. So you had to go out and get cash flow to push the company. So I had to look.
At the time, the tire industry competitors were moving largely in a different direction. Many had secured contracts with large firms like Cycle and Carriage and had been supplying their clients for years.
In the mid-70s, after the government decided that they will not protect the local tire manufacturer here, I flew to Japan. I knew that the market would open, opportunities were wide open, so I started to knock door at all the manufacturers in Japan. And I found Falcon Tires. The company was later on acquired by Sumitomo Electric, and they really expanded from there. The technology became better product.
Stanford Tires went on to be the sole distributor for Continental in the 1980s. And today, they have a diversified client base, including Otsu Tires, General Tires, South Pacific Tires, and their very own in-house label, Sumo Tires.
We find that customers are not that brand conscious in terms of what they like to buy. They are brand conscious in terms of the shop that they go to. If you continue to give a quality service, quality product, reasonable price, the customer will keep coming back. And the word of the mouth is even more important than the newspapers or all promotions that you do.
In 1977, Kok Wah was hit by the first real crisis of his short career. It was a crisis that was both professional and personal, the death of his father. But the graduation from son of the boss to head of company was less a crowning than it was an initiation by fire. When the banks heard about the death, they responded by withdrawing the lines of credit because they were uncomfortable with the youth and inexperience of his successor.
In the 70s, when my father passed away, we had an American bank that was our sole banker. And when they saw the leadership was not clear, they withdrew the line. Of course, I went around to look for lines. In those days, it was hard to get lines. And I found Hong Leong Finance approached us and gave us a working capital line, which was very suitable for small and medium enterprise then. And as the company grew, I again left them and went to the banks, and because the banks could give you trade financing without security.
Kok Wah pulled free of the crisis, and Stanford Tires grew in leaps and bounds. Kok Wah handled the business with all the skill of a seasoned professional.
They're willing to learn. They have the ability also to look at other markets and other countries and learn what's happening there and bring good ideas back to this market and develop those ideas and concepts and see them through to the finish.
Mr. Wee, as a business person in this field, you could actually term him the Lao Qian Pei, somebody who has vast knowledge, because Mr. Wee himself started delivering tires, recapping tires. His market knowledge is very good. And he, I think, is the main drive behind the company.
It was not till nearly 10 years later that this determined entrepreneur was to hit his next crisis, possibly the most threatening of his entire career. Find out what it was next on First Fortunes. When Wee Kok Wah, the force behind Stamford Tires, revolutionized his father's small tire rethreading company, he had proven the banks wrong. They had withdrawn their lines of credit when he took over the company at the age of 26. 10 years after securing enough alternative funding to keep the company going and growing, he was to hit his next big crisis.
When I found out that he had cancer, both of us were away. We were traveling together. We were in London, actually. And when this news, was broken to us, the first thought that came to my mind was, what should I do to be able to get him the medical help? So he was admitted to hospital, and I had to run around and get the doctors in Singapore to give me advice and so on. It was then not a time to really think about the business, although it did cross my mind, and of course the children, but the first thing was to do what I can to get the best medical help for him.
I think when one has cancer, everyone thinks you're going to die. I think there's a strong possibility of that. Most important thing came to mind, I want the problem fixed. The problem has to be fixed, and where could I go to? When I had my first operation, I was in Boston, and I got it done up. I was lucky. They took out a kidney, and I've lived since, 15 years, more than 15 years ago. I'm a lucky one.
History seemed to be repeating itself. When his bankers were notified of his illness, they responded by once again stopping the flow of funds. Not only that, they wanted their money back, a hefty $7 million.
So I again went back to Hong Leong Finance and the EDB to help us out with working capital line, which both of them accepted us and helped us out. So the message, the lesson I learned is that for a small, medium enterprise like ourselves, we have to depend mainly on our Singaporean local type of bank or Asian banks that have a long-term commitment here.
Within 6 months, the same length of time he had asked the banks to give him, Kok Wah had recovered almost fully from the cancer.
My husband is a very determined person. He's very optimistic. Through all the crises that we have been through together, he has never looked at the bleak side of it. He's always looked at how it was a problem, and we had to solve the problem together, and how should we do it? What was the best way of solving this problem? And we tackled each and every one of our crises that way.
Stamford Tires, by this point, had gained a momentum of its own. In 1989, the company took insurance giant Prudential as a partner and were listed by 1991.
I invited Prudential to join me, Prudential Asset Management. We needed more working capital. It was necessary, the growth was too fast. And like all local SMEs, you're always short of working capital. And we learned that it wasn't reliable to depend on banks alone. So the only way you can build up your capital was, number one, by profits, so you had to be profitable. And number two, you basically have to throw in everything you've got into the business to sustain that growth.
With the money that was raised, the company went regional in a big way, setting up outlets in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and China. But as all this was happening, another crisis was about to strike. On 20th January 1997, Singapore's second largest fire in terms of commercial losses destroyed the main Stamford Tires warehouse, together with $18 million worth of inventory and more than $6 million worth of fixed assets.
I called for a meeting with the staff immediately, and the major head of departments and the team. I said, number one, how do we get our stock back? Number two, find a new location to warehouse the stocks. Number three is to assure all our customers that we can continue to supply.
I think Mr. Wee was very strong. All of us were so scared to do anything. We were too stunned to do anything. But he was the man behind us. Within a week, he pulled us out, and moved us to another office and get us moving on. and put our mind into our work. And I think that is what he is strength.
The crisis didn't daunt Kok Wah. His team pulled through to get Stanford Tires back on its feet. Today, the company's business is worth more than $100 million a year, a long way from the $50,000 a month Beach Road business only 30 years ago.
Stanford Tires has approximately 20 to 30 million worth of tire stock in the warehouse. So it is like a supermarket where a customer can walk in and he can be very sure that he's going to get a minimum of 90% of what he requires, as opposed to having to go to the factory where one has to wait 90 days.
Basically, I want to be able to give the motorists a one-stop center.
Beyond the business of tires, First Fortunes takes a look at another side of Kok Wah after the break.
To look good, you need to feel good. For beauty from within, you need to be in the pink of health.
This week, correcting the aging vision.
Mono vision, which allows people the flexibility of not needing to wear reading glasses despite being over the age of 40.
And getting rid of the telltale signs of age.
The Pink of Health, a health show for women. Thursday, 8:30 p.m. on Channel News Asia.
On Primetime Morning Thursday,
we zoom in on a weighty concern.
Well, it's about this man who went on a fast food diet for a month and documented the entire experience in the film Super Size Me.
We review his experience tomorrow on Primetime Morning.
Singapore viewers can listen in too on TV Mobile 89.3 FM.
Kok Wah of Stanford Tires says successful entrepreneurship is a matter of being able to meet obstacles head-on.
I think one has to stay focused in his core competence. You've got to know your own limitations, your own skills, your own advantages, and really make use of them within a given situation to exploit it. But the other thing, you have to be patient, because it doesn't mean everything falls in place immediately. When we go overseas, normally we lose money the first year. Then hopefully on the second year we break even, and the third year we see some profits.
According to Kok Wah, hard work is another indispensable hallmark of being an entrepreneur. For the first 25 years of his career, it was not unusual for Kok Wah to work 70 to 80 hours a week. And even today, he still often works 10-hour days, a workload he claims is comfortable.
I'm 54, I'm still young. I could take a lesser day-to-day approach. I could be more on consultancy basis. But the company is growing so fast, there's so much to do, so much challenges ahead.
Helping him along the way has been his wife, Dawn, who joined the company 11 years ago on the advice of his mother. She took over the finance and administration of the business.
我叫接嚟，你中意做會菜油嘅秘煮咯。啊，我就買啦，你嚟嘅你硬少好學啦。你話驚人買嚟再個古惑菜，我但登嚟嘅你再攤嘅古惑菜啊，唔使，你就叫佢登嚟少好就係使。啊，你就叫佢登嚟少好啦。
I brought in, I guess, my experiences of working for big corporations and put the finance and admin slowly in place. Also helped him look after the staff when he was away.
The Wees met more than 30 years ago when they were both teenagers.
Kok Wah and I met in the university, and we were one of those campus romance cases. way back in 1967. I met him, and to impress me, he took me to this then very expensive Indian restaurant called Omar Khayyam in Hill Street. I still remember it very well. And I was very impressed because I thought, wow, this guy, you know, can take me to a very expensive restaurant. But actually, I found out later that he had won some money in a poker game amongst his friends.
The romance blossomed. And when Don joined the company in 1982, the experience of working together proved to be a match made in heaven.
We got along well. It was like back to university days. We were university romance, so we were always together then. So working together wasn't any different.
Because he's a workaholic, and every time, even to this day, okay, even when we travel, it's always on business. We catch like maybe a weekend off and relax or whatever, but it's always on business. He loves it. It's his work. I always tease him, it's his first love. That's why I joined the business, because I might as well, you can't beat him, you might as well join him.
And when Kok Wah isn't busy working, he's spending time with the rest of his family.
I think the times that have been crucial and important, he's been there for me. For example, I used to work at TCS, and I was acting in an episode of Phua Chu Kang, and he had some infection in his mouth, and it sort of looked like he had mumps. You know, his face was all swollen. But he still turned up to watch me act, and it was just like I just appeared in one scene, you know. But he came to the recording and turned up in the studio and watched me go through this one scene and then disappeared and went home. So that was cool.
And even though it looks like a successor from within the family is unlikely, Kok Wah says he has no regrets about how his life has turned out.
After what I've gone through, I regret nothing. I mean, you know, no, I think it's no use looking back. It's no use comparing either. It's endless to that. So always look forward, and I look forward to every day. I'm happy with what I see around me, but I would like to see the company much bigger. My friend in England, Quick Fit, they sold out their business. They had 2,000 shops, sold it to Ford for £1 billion. I'm sure we can develop something close to that, especially with the Asian market at your door. And we like to see the company going to that direction.
For the foreseeable future, this tire tycoon will keep using his untiring energy to drive the company forward and build a future even more spectacular than the past.